Hello.
That's
Hello.
it. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, you do what you like.
Position it wherever you
Nice
want. As long as you're nice and close. Bring it closer if you want.
No, that'd be all right, because it was only when I turned to talk to you. Or
Yeah, and that's why this setup's much better. We've got the 2 cameras and stuff like that, so it works well.
Just spent a bit more money.
That's it.
Yeah, try not to spill my drink down me like we did all the time.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, you did.
Well, thanks very much for coming back on.
Do you want to reintroduce yourself, please?
All right, my name's Peter Collins. I am the Forced Drug Expert Lead for Avon and Somerset Police.
Oh. It's quite interesting, really, how we do completely opposite work, but similar, if you see what I'm saying. It has that kind of...
Well, the 3 of us do, really. We sort of all work in a similar world.
But in different roles.
In different roles, yeah.
Because you do your IT for treatment side of things.
He does.
Exactly, yeah.
I do rehab, and then you've got...
From the criminal side.
Contract for VIA.
We'll find out soon.
You don't know yet.
Don't know yet. I was going to ask you about that.
I just seen that they'd won another contract for Gloucestershire, maybe. I think
have they?
Yeah. So yeah, they are.
They seem to be growing.
Yeah, well, that was their plan. I think because they were like Westminster
drug project.
Yeah, so they wanted to expand nationally as opposed to just being like considered London based.
Yeah, which makes sense. I still think it's a strange name. But...
Yeah, it was like Addaction in Western. They changed their name to We Are With You, but they just call themselves With You. It sounds a bit.
Yeah.
Is it what we've had this dilemma, haven't we? Because we want to change the charity name.
We do
at some point, and we're thinking about it, and it's trade is a different name.
What you mean, as opposed to
Somewhere House, Somerset? We want to trade as something else, and no, still trade, but call ourselves something else.
Yeah,
that's correct. And we're just in the proceeds of doing a little bit of kind of investigative work out there as to how to do it, but. I think it can create a confusion when people change their names, because it's like, well, why have you called yourselves that? There's no link to previous names, so people then don't know who you are. And I always think that's a bit odd. People still need to know there's got to be a connection to it.
I know. I did some work years back for an organisation called Taunton.
The homeless place, isn't it?
Yeah,
Association of the Homeless.
For the homeless, yeah.
And they changed their name recently.
They did.
They have.
A few years ago, but they still say previously known as TA.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
I think that caused them a lot of problems, them changing their name down there. I think a lot of people didn't understand what they were.
It was a very odd name they changed it to. I can't remember what it is now.
Yeah, it doesn't reflect what they actually do.
No.
It can be a problem.
In fact, I was talking to one of their ex-staff about it. Just before Christmas, I bumped into him, and he was saying, "Oh, it was just chaotic changing the name, and then it created further problems because you've got councils and housing associations and other people to kind of link to.
Yeah.
So it's just, I think it's just one of those things, really, at the end of the day. So, what's been happening in your world since our last podcast? Because can you remember what your goals were from your last podcast?
Goals?
Yeah, we said, what do you want to achieve in the next year?
Did I say that?
You did, yeah.
Did you record?
No, I have not. I was thinking I should have.
We should have written them down, and then we could have brought them back to you. But
yeah. How long ago was that?
Over a year.
It's
about 18 months, I think. It's been a little while.
So I suppose what's changed?
So, in the last year, probably the most significant things that I've been involved with would be. And they all sort of join into each other. So you're probably aware of the Taliban ruling in Afghanistan that people cannot produce controlled drugs. So what that's caused a massive reduction in opium production.
Oh, really?
So opium is used to make heroin, which the UK use a substantial amount each year. So that was a potential problem for us, but we are aware, and personally I'm aware from based on news reports or documentation produced, open source, all available, that the amount of heroin that's going to be produced from opium is going to be reduced, but the reports show that the growers and organised crime groups that operate in Afghanistan making heroin have probably got substantial stockpiles of opium.
Yeah.
There, there's reports varying from 2 years to 10 years worth of stockpiling.
Wow.
So that there's potential that at some point, if the Taliban continue with their ban, that there'll be no heroin available. At some point, it will stop. So that's led on to another issue that we've experienced twice now in our force area. Once in Bristol, which was in June last year, and then in Bath over Christmas period last year. So, and that's the discovery of what we call Nitazines within the heroin. Nitazine is a synthetic opioid, so it's a man-made opioid, if you like, which is significantly stronger than heroin. So therefore, it presents a massive issue with overdose, and that's what we saw in Bristol in June. Was a massive increase in overdoses and deaths as a result of that. Now, when I say as a result, we can confirm that some of the substances are found to contain disease. So, and a similar occurrence was in Bath, but not so much on a bigger scale as it was in Bristol recently, end of December, beginning of January. So that sort of thing has been experienced around the country, not all the time, but it's almost like someone brings in some, and then it's used and goes somewhere else. So I can't really say why that's happening, but yeah, it's potentially a sign of things to come. So if that happens, then it'll just turn the drug use business upside down, really, because these things are so strong, hence why the overdoses are happening, because people are taking too much.
Well, they're taking what they normally think they need to take, and then they end up.
Yeah, well, I don't believe anybody goes out to a synthetic opioid dealer and asks for some. They're buying heroin and it's already got it in there. They're probably almost certainly unaware. First they're aware is when they have an adverse effect, or they have an overdose and unfortunately they die. So yeah, it's
Does naloxone combat it as well, even though it's synthetic?
Yeah, it does. I'm no expert on naloxone, but obviously I'm aware of what it can do, and I carry both injectable and nasal spray myself.
Yeah.
And the reports that we're getting is that it's significantly more naloxone required for synthetic opioid, or it's almost like the stronger the heroin, the substances in it, the more naloxone is required. So
my team are just doing their training as we speak. Actually, they've done it this morning. Naloxone training.
But it is a bonus for the world that naloxone does work as well.
If you can get it to the person at the right time, at the right place, in the right situation.
Well, that's that would be an ideal situation. I saw something the other day about a system where naloxone can be delivered to a location by drone.
Wow, it's very future.
Yeah, but there's also talk about, I don't know if you're aware, but in Bristol, they probably in some other parts of the country, they have what they call bleed kits. So you got, where you got defibrillators.
Yeah,
they're putting bleed kits in there with them as well. So if someone's stabbed or injury and blood loss, then it's to help stem the blood loss. So brilliant idea. So the plan probably is to put naloxone in those locations. There's always been a bit of an issue around the actual possession and supply of it.
Of naloxone, you mean?
Yeah. So even the police supply that we have has to rest with a treatment agency, a local treatment agency who we buy it through, and then we need replenishments. Personal issue, then we have to go to them for it. So I can't hold a stock to give to my.
It's wrong, isn't it? Yeah. We've had the same problem. So for us to actually to get it, for the team to have it at hand, we have to have it prescribed out of area, because our it might have changed now. I'm hoping it's changing. Our local area wouldn't give us a supply of it.
Yeah.
So what happened is people would come, say, from London or wherever they was coming, or even from some, and they'd have to come in with their own naloxone. We would have to store it appropriately, and then when they leave, we have to give it back to them. And to have a spare is only if they send 2 up, and we can have 1 spare and they can have 1 to take with them. And that's because a nice care manager will give it to us.
Yeah, I think it is changing, but at the moment, as far as I'm aware, we still have to go to the treatment agency to get a replenishment. So yeah, if I was to use mine, then I'd have to go to them to get it. So yeah, it's not it's not ideal, and I think everyone knows that, and I think there's processes in place to have that sorted out. Yeah, because we're just trying to save lives here, aren't we? So
yeah, absolutely.
I can't believe we're putting barriers up for people trying to save lives. We any police officer in Avon, Somerset that would like to carry it is allowed training. So
it's good.
We have a proper documentation about who's got it and when it's used. So I can easily see when it's used, and off the top of my head, there's about 15 occasions where a police officer has saved a life, in 23. So,
wow, that's fantastic, though, isn't it? Yeah.
I always said if I saw one entry where one life was saved, then I would have been happy, and it was money well spent. So, but yeah, cops are saving lives all the time. So,
but people don't see that about the police, do they? They can very often have a negative attitude towards the police instead of actually seeing that positive side of what they do. And I think that's something that, I was brought up, I'm a bit older than both of you, I think, but, you went to the police if there was a problem, and the police helped you. And generally they did. Those that could would. Those that, it's not always the case, but, do you know what I'm saying? It is the fact that they are trusted. It's a bit like the black cab people, I was always taught, if you've got a problem and you're in an area where there's a black cab, don't get in any other cab, get in a black cab. You know what I'm saying? Because you knew that they were going to look after you. And I know that's changed slightly in certain circumstances, but the majority of people that drive a black cab, particularly in London, are reasonably good people, or supposedly good people. And I think that kind of falls onto the police as well. You've got a cohort of people that have got a common goal, which is to support the local public.
Yeah, probably not everybody shares your views. There's been events in recent years which have probably even changed the opinion of the most conservative people, around the police, because there has clearly been murderers and rapists amongst us, So yeah, that hasn't helped. But at the end of the day, one of the core roles of police is to help people. So that's what a majority. That's what just about every police officer is there and doing. So,
but do you not find that? I mean, I don't know if you both feel that like this, but that bit about, in most industries, you will have situations that are where some staff don't necessarily do what they say on the box, or their moral compass isn't the same as the organisation's moral compass. And, I've seen it in my industry a lot, where people have acted inappropriately with a vulnerable person or whatever like that. And so therefore what I've, and I'm rigid, if somebody does that, I report them. I've got no qualms about that at all. And would I employ them? Never. If you see what I'm saying, that's, as far as I'm concerned, they're done. It's inappropriate, but you get that in every walk of life.
Yeah, I don't doubt that. And then one would like to hope to think that the people with a uniform on are the most trustworthy members of the public, because at the end of the day, police officers are just a member of the public doing a job, and yet the opinion of most people would be that they should be the most trusted members of society, given the role that they do. And when people find out that that's not always the case, then maybe it clouds their judgment on policing in general.
But that's that blanket. That's that blanket judgment, isn't it? And I mean, who are we as human beings? Who do we have the right to have a blanket judgment? I'm a counsellor. That's what I do. I'm a therapist. That's my primary purpose in life is to help people get well and etc. You could judge me on other things that have happened in my life because of that. And she's obviously crap at that. But the reality is, I know I'm really good at what I do. Just because you might have had one negative experience with me, it doesn't mean to say that all counsellors are rubbish or whatever.
But you look at the murder of Sarah Everard, for example. Right, we all know who that is and what happened there. But ask yourselves, who was the last person that was murdered? Can you name another person that was murdered recently? You probably can, because that one was so high profile in the public eye because of the perpetrator, a police officer. So not all organisations and companies and businesses have an internal affairs type. Well,
they're not answerable to the public, are they?
And that's the thing, and people are killed all the time. People are raped regularly. This all happens, but we don't generally get to hear about most of it because it's not involving a person in the public eye. If it was an MP, we would. But because it's a police officer, then yes, there's a massive public, announcement around it all. So
it's just about the media, isn't it? The media want to sell papers, they want to get people talking about things, and when it's something that's so, highly emotive to the general public, they're going to make a big thing out of it.
Yeah, one comment about the if you look on social media in relation to the current television program, which has followed an investigation team within AIM Somerset, but most of the comments are saying where there's comments where there's people supporting the police, they're suggesting that we show all the good work that our cops do, not the bad cops that are in there. Which they're everywhere in all forces. Yes, every force, and no one would be naive enough to think that we could eradicate corruption or bad policing. It wouldn't. You just can't do it. And but yeah, it would be useful to show a better aspect of the police. But yeah, you're right, Mike. It's this side of the business sells papers, doesn't it?
Exactly.
And advertising space, and that's at the end of the day. I know the producer of this company. I was involved of this program. I was involved with him on another TV production around policing, and he does some good work, and he's very thorough. But yeah, I like a lot of people. It would be better, in my eyes, if we showed some positive policing rather than just trying to make money.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've only got to look at some of the other TV shows out there, like Traffic Cops, Motorway Cops, those kind of TV shows on. I think they're on Channel 5. They don't show little old lady that's weaving across the road, getting stopped by the cops and given some advice. They see the big crashes, the big chases, because they're the ones that are more interesting. They're the ones people want to watch. Yeah. They're the ones that get clipped up and shared online on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok and things like that. So, yeah, it's all about what can they produce that's going to get the most impact and talked about the most.
How sad is that? That that all we're in. I mean, I'd love to do a program about good news. I mean, I know they tried that and it didn't work, but it's like just the normal things in life that happens. It's, 10 minutes ago, somebody sent me a bouquet of flowers, and it was like, it was just a random gift of kindness. It wasn't for a birthday or Christmas or anything like that. It was just a kindness thing. And you think, they're the things that we should be celebrating,
and, for sure,
and letting people know that there are people out there that do things like that are kind and do give back, and the good work that lots of people do in the community. Lots of people. I mean, people are very quick to, particularly the media, of looking on a negative position instead of looking on a positive position.
Because again, it gets people more highly energized. It gets people motivated. That's just how it works. And it'll be in the news for a week, and then it'll be
forgotten about.
Old chip paper, as they used to say. Another good example is the issues with the schools and the concrete that's crumbling. You know, that was a major issue however many months ago, back in August, I think it was. It's gone very quiet now, though, hasn't it?
Yeah. I did hear about that. It was about £150 million to repair it all. The contractor's gone bankrupt, haven't they, now?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. You've got,
Did he take the money first?
Probably. But again, you've got, Somerset County Council who have announced, £100 million budget deficit. It's in the news virtually every day at the moment. But I'm sure in a few weeks' time it will get forgotten and the newspapers will stop writing about it because it's old news. There's another new exciting story.
Yeah, dredging's the issue now in Somerset.
Is that right?
Well, they're not dredging, or they are dredging.
They've got no money to dredge.
Oh.
And that's why all the floods occur, allegedly.
But that's that. I mean, I can actually have a very open conversation about this because we live on the levels and we pay to the Environment Agency. I don't know if it's directly to the Environment Agency or we go via somebody else, the Axevale Drainage Board. I think it's something like that. So
effectively you pay.
Yeah, we pay every year
a
certain amount. I think it's because we've not got a lot of land, but the little bit of land that we've got is surrounded by a certain amount of water. And we have to pay to have the privilege of having that on our land, and that pays for the dredging. So that's a load of rubbish because anybody that owns a parcel of land that has a ditch around it or a arena around it, or you have to pay. So that I find that quite contradictory, really.
There was something, I don't know, maybe it was 10 years ago, David Cameron, I don't know when, 5 minutes, that he agreed for funding Somerset levels, and that was all done, and the time's come when it needs to be done again. I think it's normally dispute between, I don't think anybody disagrees that it needs doing. Yes, they all agree that it needs doing. It's just like who pay for it, that's the issue.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
But it comes back to responsibility. So we don't get any of our ditches cleared around the edge of anything that falls into, like, say, a big green or a river. They are supposed to sort it out. Anything that is like a small thing, say like we've got a couple on the road, it's our responsibility to sort it out. It's our responsibility to make sure that they're clear. Now I ride around in the countryside and I can see and I'm thinking, my goodness, why wouldn't you clear that? We would just, Dave and I would automatically do it because I think, well, I don't want my land to flood. I don't want my house to flood. I don't want this to flood, So I suppose it's when you buy land, you have a responsibility. Landowners have a responsibility to kind of keep their land in an appropriate way. You're privileged to own it, for goodness sake. It's a tough one. It is a tough one. And it also costs time and money. And you've got an elderly farmer who's 83 and he's on his own at home and he's not got very much money coming in. The chances are he couldn't have the physical energy or the time to actually do it himself.
All the money to pay.
The money to pay for somebody to do it, yeah. It is a tough one.
In terms of budgets, do you manage your kind of team's police budget or have an input into it?
We don't generally have a budget, so it's not that I dip into a fund to do things with it. Budgets are complex things, and I try not to get too involved in that side of things, And but we this is something that's quite interesting. We do have a fund which I manage, where if a drug dealer is arrested and convicted of drug dealing and is found in possession of cash, there's two types of cash businesses in law enforcement. There's the Proceeds of Crime Act, which is where a drug dealer's been convicted and the evidence shows and the court agrees that they've made £1 million from drug dealing over the last couple of years. If they've got a house that's worth £1 million, then the police are entitled to cover that value. So that person then has an order where they have to pay £1 million. So how they get that money is up to them, sell their house, whatever, saving. So that's how it happens. The other side of it is what we call Section 27 of the Misuse of Drugs Act, which allows for a court to forfeit cash seized from drug dealers. So a drug dealer, a lower level drug dealer, who's arrested and he's got £1,000 cash in his possession, then a judge can order the forfeiture of that money, and that comes directly to the police into the fund, Section 27 fund. So I manage that fund, and I use that money to give to teams to buy equipment, to hire covert vehicles, anything, training, anything to do with drug enforcement, in order to assist them in dealing with more drug supply offenders. So that works really well. The proceeds of crime side of things is a sort of government type issue, where the government takes some of the money and some of the money comes to the force. Some of it goes regionally. So there's a spread out of money, but that's more based on actually seizing assets and selling them, or having the offender needing to sell their assets in order to pay their proceeds of crime bill.
Rightly so.
Yeah. So
I imagine that process can take quite a long time.
It can do with that, but as I understand it, if people don't pay by a certain time, then they get more time in prison.
Right. Okay. So there is on them really to kind of push, the sale of the house or vehicles or whatever it is.
And it doesn't go away. Their bill would always be there. They have to pay. And if people can't pay their money still, then if in 10 years' time they're out of prison and they're found to commit a crime or have money, then they have to give it to the police as well.
Wow.
So even if they become a legitimate businessman, I understand, if they make some money, then they have to
still got to pay the bill.
Good.
Yeah. I don't know the ins and outs of it, but that's genuinely as I understand.
It always amuses me because, when people come into rehab and things like that, and I think, how can you afford those trainers? How can you afford that jumper? And it's not stolen. They've purchased it, and obviously they've been dealing and stuff like that. And I know that. We know that through assessment and stuff like that. But you think they have a better lifestyle than a lot of people that are out there working 40 hours a week.
Yeah, they can do, yeah.
Yeah, some do. I'm not saying it's a nice lifestyle, because eventually it catches up with you.
Yeah.
But and most of them are users, so it doesn't work out for them anyway.
No, there's substantial amounts of money to be made from dealing drugs, and it's not a difficult business generally, but it's like investing. You invest with a major company, then it's a low risk, so you get money back, but not as much as if you invest with your neighbour, for example, where you get a decent return, but if you ever saw your money. But if you look at drug dealing, then yes, there's a massive risk, and that's a massive risk. Yeah. So with a massive risk, you'd expect massive reward, wouldn't you? Yeah. So it's and sometimes people lie low and just keep the money hidden. Sometimes they'll buy things with it, and young people like trainers, don't they? They like nice cars. So that's the sort of thing.
I think also it's that kind of, they like to show off their lifestyle, and they like to promote it and show them, look what car I've got. You should become a drug dealer too.
Yeah.
That seems, you see that online on TikTok and Instagram a lot.
Yeah, it is glamorized in some TV programs, but that's life. That's how it is. That's what people do.
Yeah, but I get the tail end of that. So you get people that are like 30 years younger than I am, and they can't walk, and they've got brain damage, and they've got stab wounds all over them, and I could go on. They've been raped and various other bits and pieces, and it's not as glamorous as it makes out to be, because fundamentally there's generally somebody bigger than you.
Yeah. That's one thing. It's not unless you're in charge, Yeah. But there isn't many people in charge, and there's a lot of people on the ground doing the job, and it's not something that's not common knowledge, but a lot of people are forced into the business, and they're trapped in it, because they may have lost some drugs, they may have been arrested, and and then they become indebted. Even when they come out of prison, they're still indebted to these people, so they have to continue and and make the money back, which never happens. So they're always there.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not a pleasant business, but people running a business can make substantial amounts of money. That's clear.
And it's that abusive environment. I mean, you must experience that on a day-to-day basis in the police force. Is recognizing and seeing that abuse that's happening out there to people that are in those difficult situations. Do you know what I mean? They're an addict and they've started to do a little bit of dealing because they've been persuaded to do so, been given a bit of free drugs, and before you know it, they're away, and then somebody borrows something or takes something or doesn't pay them back, and then they're in that cycle, and it's like it's pitiful to watch.
Yeah. I would say it's sometimes difficult to judge because the modern slavery, human trafficking aspect to this, it's sometimes difficult to establish if someone is actually a slave, they're actually being made to do this, as opposed to saying I'm made to do this. So it's difficult sometimes, but that is quite a significant factor in an explanation that people give. I no doubt that many of them are enslaved, but it's sometimes hard to tell. It's hard to tell,
but also they don't want to say that they've been enslaved, because then that creates another lot of problems that they've got to deal with on top of it.
Yeah, I mean, there are people that are convicted of drug supply offences, but it's been shown that they are slaves to the business, and therefore, if someone's made to deal drugs and they have no way of not dealing drugs because their family may be threatened, or they're threatened, or they're even assaulted themselves, so therefore they have no option to do what they do. So therefore, they can't be convicted really or they can't be punished for dealing drugs when they've been made to do it. It's like anything else. If you're made to do something, it's out of your control. So there are people that don't go to prison.
And are there good support programs to kind of almost rehabilitate them back into society in those instances?
That's a no.
Like anything else, there is things in place, but it could be a lot better. At that point, it generally becomes out of the hands of any enforcement agency, and we don't know what happens after that. So
probably more of a social services type remit. I think
it comes to drug services and NHS and various other rehabilitation services. But the fact is that, like everything, you've got to go through a system.
Of course,
and it's generally only the person, it's not the family. So trying to move that family is quite a difficult task to do. In fact, I don't think there's very few agencies that offer that kind of service at all, where you'd literally upstick a whole family and start again and give them. I don't think that facility is really out there.
I mean, everybody would like to do that sort of thing, but that would be very expensive.
Absolutely.
And it's unlikely to happen. But you're right. If people, it's not uncommon for people from gangs who want to get involved in the gang to agree to go somewhere else, and work, and they'll do that. I remember some time ago reviewing some work, and the lad was in another part of the country dealing drugs. And his mum was making sure he was home by 9 o'clock on Sunday because he had college in the morning.
Wow.
Completely unaware of where he was and what he was doing, and expecting him to wander back to the house at 9 o'clock in order to go to college in the morning. So, that's what typical, I think, of what goes on. A lot of young people involved in that side of the business, and it's a shrewd move by the controllers of these gangs, because it's clear that young people generally, juveniles, if you like, people under 17, under 18, under 16, they will not get the same treatment as in the criminal justice system as an adult. So it's almost like it's a pull for them to be brought into the gang. You're only 15, you're not going to get prison. Police will interview you, then they'll let you go. They might take you to social services, but then you could just run away. But you're unlikely to get locked up, as it were. So, and then when that happens, they realise it's happened, and they're even more confident then. So that's the sort of way that works, and that's why they're using young people. And then on the other hand, they use vulnerable people. So people who are dependent on drugs, they give them, I've seen it many, many times where, someone that uses heroin and are dependent on it, and they're given free heroin, crack, to allow the gang to operate from their house or their flat, and then they get involved in doing some running for them, some dealing, and then comes the point where, hang on a sec, we've given you all these drugs, you've got to pay for them. Well, I haven't got no money, so so then they work for them, and that's their job then to do that, and so you get a different aspect. Whereas initially they're doing this voluntary and they're getting paid for it, paid well, and then things change, and then they're forced into doing it, so they have no option but to continue doing that and do other things. So that's how the circle works. So difficult for people to get out of that until they're caught and then put in prison. But yeah, it is common that young people and vulnerable adults are used in the dangerous edge of the business.
So sad. It's so sad. It really is. And you see them outside the schools. And, I don't have any hesitation in taking a photograph of the car that's waiting for the kid to come out. And I openly, they don't like it. They come chasing after me. I don't care. Fundamentally, as far as I'm concerned, you're doing something that's wrong, and it's intimidating to our young people. It's wrong. But so many people are frightened of that kind of challenging that scenario. Because they can be not very nice people.
Yeah, you're right. And some of these bigger gangs, they're not afraid to be violent. And we've seen it, serious injury and even death. So they are prepared to protect their business to that extent. So yeah, it's not a nice business to be in. And, unfortunately, there is some really bad sides to it all.
I mean, it must take the toll emotionally and spiritually and physically on police as a whole, really, as to how the hell do you cope when you're watching, witnessing and being part of that on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, there's loads of organisations within the police and organisations outside that the police can have access to help with all aspects of issues that arise out of policing. And from what I'm aware of, they seem to be adequate services for our staff. But yeah, I can't really say much.
It's interesting because I've privately seen people that are in the forces. The reason they've come to me privately is because actually they don't want to go internal, because sometimes that can create more of a problem for them. And it can paying the money to come and see somebody like myself. And I can imagine that is, it's a cultural thing, isn't it? Who wants to admit that you're struggling?
Yeah.
Who wants to, I did some mental health training once for the various different organisations. And one of the things that people come up to me at the end of the training and go, I can't say anything in here because if I say that actually I've struggled with my mental health, I'm never going to live it down. And I think that's that is culturally, that is how it is for a lot of organisations, isn't it? And I'm not just talking about the police, I'm talking about lots of different organisations.
No, you're right. And I think they might have touched on this before about barriers. That is a barrier to getting help, isn't it? What will other people think? So I would have thought that would be a factor as well, and that may persuade people to go to a private treatment session with somebody that the organisation wouldn't be aware of. So, but to be fair, the police are quite. I think the setups they've got to deal with issues like that are really good. and I wouldn't sorry to judge, but I wouldn't think too many people go outside the organisation because of what's set up inside to deal with these sort of things. You know, whether difficult for me to comment because I don't know the extent of mental health issues within the organisation. You know, whether there's thousands of people with issues or just a handful. But you know, I don't. I see it all the time about availability of different things. So
which is reassuring.
Yeah, I would say that we have it covered. Enough services on hand.
Because I wouldn't want to do your job.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's a job, and you know, I thoroughly enjoyed my time as a police officer. You know, things are completely different now than when I had a uniform on, and things will be completely different in 10, 20 years' time as well. Yeah. So those things change, but yeah, it can be a difficult job, and you know, it can cause issues. Yeah.
How do you balance that in your your other life, if you see what I'm saying? So you've got your money earning life, and then you've got a life.
Yeah, I know that the police are really hot on work-life balance, and that's something that's brought up and discussed around with managers and supervisors about, you know, that side of things. So, you know, I only know what I can do, and my wife is in the same business as I am, so we can talk to each other about stuff. But the issue sometimes does occur when you can't talk. If I spoke to you here now about an incident that happened last week and started telling you names and what happened and where it was, you know, then I'm breaching data protection. So, so you can't breach data protection. So you can't tell people, you know,
what's going on.
Yeah. So hence why the internal support is there to be able to do that, you know. So, but you know, I can talk about things if I need to, and that works for me. I think we talked about last time that I don't feel that there's any issues. I get very frustrated and concerned about things, but it's not anything that I found too difficult to deal with, you know.
How on a slightly different topic, how are you finding technologies changing kind of your work? Because clearly there's, you know, more and more technologies being used. I imagine it's getting more and more difficult as well to access information that perhaps you need. You know, is there lots of tools and support with that stuff?
Yeah, there are lots and lots and lots of applications that we have access to do our job, you know, and some of them are brilliant, and some of them are really poor. Some of them just don't work. Some of them we spent a fortune on and got nothing for it. You know, wow. Some of them we've had to go somewhere else and get something else to do the same job that we wanted to do in the first place. It's sometimes that can be really frustrating, but I think our force, you know, Somerset have been leaders, I think, in technology as well. Our previous chief constable is a massive fan of technology and what he can do to improve and make our lives easier. You know, it has. You know, every member of staff that's not going into an office every day has got a laptop. Some of those have laptops. So you know, there's probably over 5,000 laptops shelled out.
Yeah,
and everybody's got mobile phones as well. So you know, and we have access to all different things. And they're even working on AI and stuff like that. You know, so they're always trying to find stuff.
Keep up to date, and
we have a massive IT department, which I didn't realise was so big. You know, and yeah, they're doing a lot of work on a lot of things. And on top of everything else, everything we do has to be 1,000,000% secure.
Of course, yeah.
Know, so
which comes with its own challenges.
Yes, of course, yeah. You know, so I would say that the technology we have is okay, but it doesn't always perform like it should do. But, you know, That's probably similar with any organisation.
Oh, for sure.
There's a human behind it, isn't there? Whatever way you want to look at it, and
but
we make mistakes.
You've got to look at how quickly technology moves.
Yeah.
You know, Apple, for example, release a new iPhone every year. So every year that comes with, you know, changes and things like that. You know, likewise, Google, Android.
I mean, the updates make changes, and I get confused about what I'm going to do.
That's it. So being able to access information that you need, you know, when you pick up a drug dealer's phone, might change from one week to the next as to how you do that.
Yeah, I think one of the other things that's probably an issue is that we generally do everything. So everything we have within our organisation is arranged by our organisation. There are some applications that are national and there are some that are regional, but most of the stuff is local. So the issue occurs where those systems can't talk to another system in another course. So frustrating, that, isn't it?
Yeah, that
becomes a problem. You know,
because that's why you can't always track people that way, can you? It's just that's why they changed the system for the GPs, and they set it up. I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head, where you can access somebody's notes all over the country.
Yeah,
if
you
you
need
want
that,
to.
don't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
We have applications like the police national computer is being moved to a new system now, but that's been around for a long time. That contains national information, which everybody can get access to. You know, so there's other systems in place which allow us to access various other bits of information from around the country. So we can do that. But I think the core equipment, IT equipment that forces use differs, and it's independent. So, I mean that you know, where we've had to buy 5,000 laptops. In a few years' time, we're going to have to buy another 5,000.
Yeah,
but that's expensive.
But if the country, if UK PLC policing were to purchase 600,000 laptops, it would be significantly cheaper, wouldn't it?
Yeah, of course.
But we don't, because we don't all use the same system. We don't all have an IT department. There's been quite a few regional amalgamations, if you like, in the southwest for various things, which again always saves money and makes things a bit more efficient. But generally I would say I'm happy. There's nothing really that I think each day I could do with this, I could do with that. You know, there's
hallelujah. You can do your job.
Yeah.
We all need you to be out there to do your job, by the way.
Absolutely.
And we appreciate it. And I mean, I know some people don't appreciate it, but I do really appreciate it.
So it's a guide how things change, right? The blue book was always something a detective had, like a hardback blue book, taking their notes in when they're out on jobs and stuff like that, and then once they're back at the station, they might transfer it to their book. But it was universal. It was used as a tray, carry 4 cups of tea, carry their food from the microwave to the table, all sorts of things. And I suspect they've probably been used as a sort of makeshift weapon at some point, you know? But yeah, probably last year, I think that the force announced that administration departments weren't going to order any more blue books. So we don't have
a blue
book anymore, because people are encouraged to use their laptops.
Yeah.
Record everything on there, you know, straight onto there. So that's it. It won't be long before they stop ordering pens. So.
Well, it's funny you say that, though, because we are completely paperless at work. So any paper that comes in gets scanned and put on somebody's file, or a variety of files on the computer. And I'm a stickler for that. You know, we don't have paper. Everybody has laptops, iPads, mobile phones. They're all fully equipped. But we buy probably about 2,000 pens a year. We're only a small organisation. Because we give them away to people who haven't caught up with the world.
Yeah.
If you sort of say. So, you know, you never know, they might buy you pens.
Maybe.
Still. I'm just aware of time, that's all.
Yeah, no, well, thank you very much, Peter, for coming back on.
Is there anything else you'd like to say before you go?
No.
You've been brilliant. Thanks.
It's always great having you. Yeah, it's just to get that insight. So.
I can come back in another year when things might be a bit different.
Definitely.
Sounds good. Yeah,
absolutely.
Be
We'd
really
love
exciting.
to have you back. Really would. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
No problem.